Welcome to the Woodlands Area Chamber of Commerce Young Professional Network podcast, a show where we discuss topics related to business, lifestyle, politics, and other challenges that young professionals are facing. We want our millennials and Gen Z to strengthen today for your impact on tomorrow.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Woodlands Area Chamber of Commerce YPN podcast. I'm so excited about our topic today. But before we get into that, my name is David DeVoe. So happy you're here with us. And I'd like to introduce to you our new co-podcast host.
I'm ready.
Co-host podcast co-host.
Woo, woo.
Woo, woo. And you are?
Kelly Hoot.
Kelly Hoot, and she is a hoot, and she has never heard that joke before, I promise you. Ha 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 ha, that's my job here, is to crack jokes. So, and then I'd love to welcome our guest, Ann Wolford of the Wolford Group.
Thank you, David. Thanks, Kelly.
Hi, Ann.
Hey.
Ann was just talking pre-roll about being an original YPNer.
I was. That was many, many years ago. And Reese Hoylman, who was the son of the chamber president at that time, and I started the Young Professionals Network, and several years after that I turned the big 4-0, and so I had to step aside.
Oh man,
That's been a long
sad.
time ago.
I'm quickly approaching that number. It's very scary. It's like the top of a hill. Oh man, just
Yeah,
kidding.
I'm on the other
There's
side
no
of
top.
that.
There's
I'm
no
on
top.
the other side of that, yeah.
It's greener on the other side. That's what I hear. That's what I hear. It's great. So today our topic, so we're going to be talking about with Ann, which I'm very excited, is we are talking about fundraising, crowdfunding, grants, all those kind of things. How do we raise money for your business, for your nonprofit? That's what you do. That's what you're good at, right?
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about the Wolford Group. Kind of set the stage for us.
So the Wolford Group started after I had a career in both the corporate world. I was a stockbroker at Merrill Lynch.
Ooh.
And then I went to work in the nonprofit sector for a large healthcare system and did fundraising, started fundraising. And I just fell in love with it. And so I ended up doing the consulting route so that I could have greater flexibility. I love working on different projects. I fall in love with every nonprofit I work with. So people hire the Wolford Group if they need help developing their board or training their board of directors, if they need event management, if they need somebody to come in and help them do a capital campaign or write a fundraising, communications plan. So essentially, sometimes too, you just need to pay an outside person to come in and tell you what you've already said to your board, but they pay attention because there's a paycheck
Right,
involved in
exactly.
that. Yeah, and someone from the outside is saying it, not an internal staff person.
That's awesome. That's incredible. She's going to come here for saying this, but that's the same thing that happens with my wife. So, I give her this great advice, and then she's like, I don't know. And then someone literally outside her, says the exact same thing. And then she's like, someone told me this today. It's such a good idea. I was like, wow, I told you that 6 months
Yes.
ago. But that's cool.
That's how it works.
Love you, babe. Anyways, so, all right. First off, let me ask you this. Do you work with nonprofits and for-profits, or is it primarily nonprofits that you're working with?
So I work for nonprofits and for-profits.
Okay.
And for-profits, my big bandwagon right now for for-profits is that I want them to have a corporate social responsibility plan. I want them, instead of just throwing a bunch of money at nonprofits, I want them to have a strategy around why they're giving that money and develop full-fledged partnerships with those nonprofits. So have your employees come volunteer for the nonprofit, have an employee on their board, and get really involved on a long-term basis where you're truly invested, as opposed to maybe buying a table at a gala, once a year.
Right. So instead of just randomly throwing your name out there, it's building relationships.
Building
actually.
relationships and aligning your corporate values with that nonprofit.
Nice. Okay. So kind of bridging that gap between the profit and nonprofit world,
Yes.
helping both sides out at the same
That
time.
helps each of them.
Yeah.
It helps a company a lot more. It's proven that employee satisfaction and feeling more invested in the company is real when you're a part of an organization that's giving back and you know what their core values are and that they're standing behind those core values. So
That's so great.
yeah.
Yes. Awesome. So I'm going to jump in. I'm going to reference my phone down here in my lap. So I've got the questions here. So the one I'm really actually most interested about right now is, so give our audience sort of a high-level overview of the differences between, let's say, fundraising, grant writing, crowdsourcing, and how successful maybe you found each to be, or if there's parallels between maybe like the size of your organization with how you should be raising money for your organization.
So fundraising is fundraising, and that's whether you're writing a grant for something very specific to raise dollars for your organization. Crowdfunding, if you're trying to fund a project and you're asking people to make donations. So fundraising, it's all inclusive. Those are just different ways to raise money, right? So
fundraising is sort of the broad category.
Fundraising is the broad category. When you're looking at something like crowdfunding, I actually, my son did a crowdfunding page to raise money to produce an album. And so they gave benefits for that. So you got one of their vinyls, you got a t-shirt, at certain levels, people were getting something in return. That was an investment. It was not something that was tax deductible because it was giving to not a nonprofit organization, but a group of people who love to make music. So you see that a ton, a lot of crowdfunding like that. But then fundraising for a nonprofit, obviously there's the charitable giving component where you feel great about supporting a mission, but you can also get a tax deduction depending on, if there's fair market value associated with it. But there are different ways to do that. You can do an annual fund. So you can send an email to all your friends and do a direct appeal online and ask people to give. You can do peer-to-peer fundraising, which is saying, David, would you set up a web page and help me raise money for XYZ organization? And you appeal to your friends. So you see that a lot with, the MS-150 and Light the Night and all these organizations that are relying on really crowdfunding type fundraising, but it's a peer-to-peer network where you're getting more people raising smaller dollars on your behalf. And then grants are more large, traditionally, larger gifts for a very specific project. So maybe you're building a building, or you need to buy a really important piece of equipment, or you need to hire a staff person. They can be used for all sorts of things. And those can be given from foundations, like family foundations, or corporate foundations, private foundations, so different sources for grants.
How do you, this question is personal, but because I've worked with a lot of arts nonprofits, and so I'm always telling them, I'm like, you gotta remember we're competing with like the homeless shelter and the food bank and things like that. So when people are looking at where they're gonna be giving those dollars, like sometimes to myself, I'm like, I'd rather help these other organizations. And so, right, it's like, it's tough. So just on a broader scale though, how do you help organizations that are looking to raise money balance between like raising money for what they need versus what they think people will actually give to, if that makes sense? So like, I remember being at Sam Houston for a long time, and then we were like, really needed a parking garage, right? And I just remember kept hearing on campus, people were like, no one's gonna donate to build a parking garage. They don't care about that. But like, if you wanna buy athletics, a new facility, they'll throw money at you because they love football. So like, how do you balance that on the sort of the corporate side?
So I think that's a great question. I had to raise, when I worked for a hospital and I was doing a capital campaign for them, I had to raise money for a helipad. Well, that doesn't sound very exciting, a helipad.
Hold on.
But then when you see the helicopter ambulance coming in and you hear some of the stories that are life-saving, that makes a difference. It makes it a little sexier. A parking garage, I don't know how you can say.
That's a tough one.
But if you could put it as part of supporting services, like if you love sports, you love coming to the football games, then you can park here and it'll be more convenient. I mean, if there's a spin you can put on it that, yes, there are things that you need that are not going to be super exciting to people. But if you can tell a story in a way that resonates with them, that there's something associated with it that is meaningful to them, then you'll have a little more success. And then I think another thing I'd like to say about that is a lot of organizations are afraid to ask for operating dollars, and that's how they run. I mean, it's there is no shame at all in saying I need to hire a staff person, and that's going to be $60,000, and because they're a development person, they'll be helping raise additional funds for the organization. So I would tell organizations not to be afraid to ask for operating costs at all, and don't be apologetic about it. And well, here's my soapbox on this.
Get it.
You know, don't work from a poverty mentality. I think there are too many nonprofit organizations who feel like, well, you know, our desk has to be on cinder blocks and a piece of plywood, and you know, I sit in a hand-me-down chair. You can't.
We have to look like we don't have any money before people will give it to us.
We want you to feel sorry for us.
Oh gosh.
But that's not aspirational, right? That's not who you want to be perceived as. You want people to see you as successful, and business people, because you're a business, you know, a nonprofit is a business. So I think those things are important as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of times people get stuck in this idea that, oh, if they don't think their dollars is going directly to our mission, then they won't give. But if I'm not here to run that mission, then there is no organization to begin with. It's weird how, right, even from the people like us who work in the for-profit side, like even when you're giving, like think about like the disconnect that you have even, like to be like, oh man, like of course they need operations, of course they need marketing, of course they need all the same things at a business because they are a business. So their mission is different. They're not building parts or offering other types of services for profit. They're helping the community, right?
What you're saying is important as well, because I think sometimes the mistakes that donors make is wanting too much control over the dollars they give. I was giving a talk for the Association of Fundraising Professionals at a conference, and a woman there said, we accept so many restricted donations, and people are giving restricted donations to support like a play structure that's been long since paid for, or a swing set, and we need that money, but the board wouldn't allow them to not accept these restricted gifts. So here they have a plethora of dollars for play equipment and no operating dollars that they really could use. So it's retraining your donors to say, you can do the greatest good for us by giving us general operating support. You know, if it's a big project and we've decided we do need something specific for that project, that's a different conversation. But in general, you need to keep the lights on, you need to pay staff salaries, you need to pay them a living wage. There's a lot of attrition, a lot of turnover in nonprofits, and a lot of it is because the pay just isn't great. So I think especially after COVID and things like that, giving a better, work-life balance. What are some things you can do? If you can't offer a bigger salary, what are some things you can do to really help retain your good employees?
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't understand that there's actually restricted versus unrestricted funding that goes to an organization, and how limiting the restricted funding is.
Yes.
Because that money just sits there and it literally cannot be used for anything else. And you would think if you're feeling led to give to an organization that you believe in, hopefully you believe in the leadership enough to make smart choices with the money that you're giving them, right?
I completely agree, and I also think it's training for the board, for the board to be able to say, this is the best way you can help us, because a lot of times an organization should be relying on their board to help them raise funds for the organization. And so making sure that that messaging is out there and everyone's on the same page about how people can greatest help the nonprofit.
Okay, so another selfish question here. So timing on giving, because I know there's a lot of times throughout the year that are already designated, like we have Giving Tuesday that happens, or we all know towards the end of the year, people are looking for those tax breaks, so we know there's a lot of end of year appeals. So would you advise people that it's best to latch on to those times and jump in with everyone else, or is it smarter maybe to find other times when not everybody else is raising money, or how does that, like, what is your
So
advice
I think
there?
you need a good balance, and I also think you need to know your donors. So I would put a plan together, because it's all about relationships, right? So getting to know your donors and thinking of them as investors in your mission. So first of all, how do they want you to communicate with them? Do they like getting a newsletter quarterly? Would they rather someone pick up a phone and give them a phone call? Some donors like text messages. I feel like, number one, get to know your donor. Number two, look at your budget and break it down. Look at, do you have a special event coming up? Is that a big source of revenue? You need to be asking your donors several times a year, but you need to be specific in who you're asking for what. So I'll give you an example. I'm working with an organization that did a special event this year, but we're not doing that event next year. So we're reaching out to each of those donors individually and saying, we're saving the cost of putting on a special event. Could we have that same level of support that you gave us last year? And we won't have the expenses associated with it, but we will give you this fabulous recognition. So, and then going on to the Giving Tuesday, which so many organizations kind of jump onto because it's right after Thanksgiving, I think November 29th this year. It is proven that donors give most the very tail end of December. So they're trying to get in those tax-deductible donations before the end of the year. And frankly, some donors, a lot of donors, are the people who will collect those appeals. If it's a physical direct appeal, they'll put them in a stack. Maybe they got them in November around Thanksgiving, and then they'll write their checks, if they're old school, like some people like me, or use the QR code.
You work at a bank, right? Don't you know that?
Yeah.
You mean an ACH?
You mean like a check?
Okay, Kelly,
Okay,
all right. So
All
I
right.
know this. So anyway, or they scan the QR code if they're a little more advanced, but they're planning to give, but they need that nudge and that reminder at the end of the year.
Right.
Another thing I would say, if you're doing your fundraising and you're doing an appeal at Giving Tuesday or something, give your donors a reason to act. Maybe there's a match. For every dollar we raise, we have a company that's going to pay 2 to 1. They're going to match that 2 to 1. Give people a compelling reason to give at that time, and maybe give more than they would have because their gift is going farther.
Do you find, I know you talked a little bit about relationship, and that was going to be one of my questions, but I know that do you find that people tend to give more based off of strictly relationships that they have with maybe either a board member or an executive director or somebody that they know that has benefited from an organization, or the mission of the organization itself?
So people give to people.
I like that.
But honestly, I can say in my business, I work with a lot of different nonprofits in different areas of interest. So I may be passionate personally about one organization's mission more so than the other, but I may be a super good friend with someone who's in this other organization. I will give potentially to support my friend who I know is passionate about it, but I'll give more to the organization I'm passionate about. So it does matter who asks you for the money. And if you can, instead of having a development staff person pick up the phone and call you to make a gift, it'd be so much more impactful if a friend of mine who's on that board of directors would pick up the phone and call me and say, hey, I just made my gift. So that peer-to-peer ask is always going to be more effective.
Yeah, at that point it becomes personal.
Yes, it becomes
There's a relationship
personal.
there's something with it.
Well, I think just like anything else in life, like if I came up to you, I was like, can I have a sip of your coffee, or can I have something? Like, it's a lot harder to say no to somebody that
So true.
than it's just like getting a random email from someone and being like,
That's
Yes,
man, yeah. And a stranger walking to you on the street and be like, oh my God, that looks so good, can I try that? So, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, you're put on the spot, and without a doubt, I hope you like cream.
and people don't like disappointing people that they love, right? Like, so there's that. You're playing on people's emotions a little bit there too. But what advice do you have for, like, I know working with a lot of smaller nonprofits, they struggle, I know, a lot with, well, one, usually staffing. Like, usually a lot of them, unfortunately, it's the executive director and maybe one other person in the office, and like
Right.
they just don't have time to fundraise. They're too busy doing it. It's like they have to choose between fundraising or actually doing the mission. Like, what advice do you have to those people other than just figure out how to hire someone?
Yeah.
Right? Like, I know that's probably the easiest thing. Well,
Yeah.
the most efficient thing, but do you have any advice for those
I would
folks?
say, first of all, figure out a way to maximize your fundraising efficiency.
Okay.
So a great way to do that is if you do an ask, like an annual appeal where you're asking for money, ask people to give a recurring gift. So it renews itself, right? So you're getting money on a monthly basis. People are able to invest more that way because it's less out of their pocket each month and it builds cumulatively, so that's very helpful. So try to make your fundraising efficient, and then that's where your board comes in. I mean, your board of directors really should be helping you make those phone calls or sign those personalized letters. You could also, even if you don't have a big board, large board, you could have a development committee. So maybe there's one person on the board who has a development committee full of community members who care about the cause, but maybe they're not at the level to serve on the board, and have them help you put your fundraising together. It doesn't have to be a staff person. You need a staff person to lead and organize, and most importantly, keep track of those donations and start to steward the donors. And even board members can help with that. So can development committee members. They can write thank you notes. They can pick up the phone and say thank you for a gift that came in. But it is a challenge. The challenge is real when you have very limited staff and you're trying to deliver on your mission, keep up with paperwork, reporting, all of those things. It is a challenge.
And so speaking of thank you notes, this is actually I'd like everybody to chime in here a little bit, but how important is like the follow-up? You know what I mean? So like you put so much effort into the ask, and then you're just so happy to get what you get, and then you go straight into using those dollars, putting them to work. Like how important is that follow-up of either the thank you note or the swag? Like, do people actually enjoy swag? Like if you were gonna give, like I'm just curious from it, if it's a generational thing or like more of an like for me, like it's more of an ESG thing, but like I don't want a thank you note necessarily in paper, or I don't want a keychain or something with your logo on it, because unfortunately most of that's going to end up in a landfill or recycle center. So, but I do like the acknowledgement. So I don't know. I just was curious. That just popped up.
Old school. I like a good thank you note. A good card, a birthday card. I mean, anything in the mail. Sometimes it's a stamp.
Because it's such an anomaly these days.
Yes, it's so exciting to check the mail and not get circulars. It's just.
And now
But isn't it frustrating though? I feel like almost every handwritten thing I get in the mail, or at least it looks handwritten, you open it up, it's a credit card offer. They're getting sneaky these days. So
No, I like a good acknowledgement for sure, but I appreciate the thank you. And also to know a little bit how it was utilized always makes me feel even better
that's a
about the
good
decision.
point. Right.
And then so the next year, the next opportunity comes, it's like, wow, I really contributed to X, Y, and Z.
I am not about swag at all. I just feel like, please don't spend the money. I give
That's what I think.
annually to an organization, and I do have a recurring gift. But if I increase my gift or something like that, and I always hear them doing their drives, you'll probably know who I'm talking about, but it's always some kind of swag, and I'm like, that is such a waste of money. Don't do that, don't. And I even have an issue with it, even if people are donating the swag. Don't donate those things. Give the organization that cash. Like don't give them something to give to donors. Maybe it's an incentive for some people, but that doesn't really resonate with me. I'd much rather have a personal phone call, or you need a letter or some kind of receipt anyway, so you might as well tell me how you used my money, or give me more information about the organization. But so many first-time donors, and I can't believe I don't have the number right off the top of my head, but I think 60% of first-time donors don't give again. And it's because the organization doesn't follow up. They never hear from them. they have an incorrect email address, or they don't know how to get in touch with them to send them a thank you note, you know? So attrition is a real deal. So once you get a donor in the door, figure out a way to develop a relationship with them, and starting with a thank you note or an acknowledgement.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be cheaper or more efficient to maintain a donor than to
Then
get a new donor. Just like
one.
with the for-profit side, it's, you know, better for the company to keep an employee than
Right,
constantly having to train new ones.
or a client, or, you know.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
yeah.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear you say that about the swag. So I feel like so much wasted money is put on swag.
It's counterintuitive, right? I mean,
Well, it's the sad part is I think it's a lot of organizations, like there's this feeling I have to give you something for you giving me something, and it's like, just do your mission. That is giving me something.
I think
So,
there are benefits to, you know, I look at these galas that we do, you know, and you get 2 bottles of wine on your table and you get this and that, and it's like, okay, well, there's $100 that you're not using for your mission because you're putting cheap wine on my table that I'm not gonna drink anyway. I mean, you know, I'm just giving examples.
Sure.
Donors I don't think oftentimes expect those things. They're happy to show up and support the mission, and, you know, maybe if it's a personalized cookie that you take as a favor on your way out, something that's consumable, something that you'll enjoy, you know, not something that you're gonna throw in the trash or, you know, have sit in a pile on your desk.
Go in a junk drawer at your home.
Yeah.
Not that any of us have those. I don't. Definitely not at one.
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah, okay. You've been in my house.
Closet
You know.
is accurate. I hide stuff.
Any other words of wisdom in this realm? You know, what do we not know that we don't know? And
I would say I know the people around this table are giving people. I mean, obviously you volunteer your time. I know that you give, you know, individually and personally, you know, through your company. I would just say, you know, the community needs people like you. They need people to invest in these nonprofits, and whether, you know, you don't always have to give money. People are so talented and they have time to offer, and nonprofits could really use those services. So maybe you're volunteering your time to help get their books in order because you're a CPA and you do that as a volunteer. Maybe you're someone who's a whiz at data entry and the nonprofit needs help getting their database up to date. Think of ways you can give back that don't necessarily involve a monetary donation, but that could really carry that nonprofit forward, especially those nonprofits you're talking about that have one executive director and a program person. Look at how you could help in those ways.
Yeah, that's great. I know, just kind of sum that up a little bit. I know JJ and I have talked a lot about this, but whether you're looking for board members, you're looking for volunteers, he says you always want to look for the 3 W's: wealth, workers, or wisdom. So people who either had longevity with the organization, who can help financially, or can offer time. I think balancing those 3 things is really
I mean, I think
advice.
the chamber has, I mean, truly a wealth of volunteers
Yeah.
who do donate their time and happily. And that's how you get to know the organization better. Working on committees, you get to know other people better.
Yeah, I show up occasionally.
Yeah,
Things,
yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
at least
David.
once a quarter.
You know, once in a blue
yeah.
moon, we'll show up at a chamber
I'm just
event.
one
Yeah.
of the Davids. So
And he's either dancing or not.
Or
we
not.
don't know if he'll bust a move or not. Yeah.
Which keeps us coming back.
Right, you never
Yes.
gotta keep them wanting. Exactly. So, well, and I know I could talk to you probably all freaking day because you were so interesting to me. And I know Kelly is just like speechless over here at how amazing you are. She's not camera shy at all, folks. That's not what he says. So
I'll get there.
I told her she was hosting fully by herself today, and she didn't believe me. So I went ahead and showed up anyways. But since our target audience is younger professionals, we probably have lost about 80% of them already by now on this stream. So we thank you for those who stuck it out with us. We appreciate you. But I'm going to wrap it up here. That's
Yeah,
cool.
well, thank
you
you.
so much.
I enjoyed
Thank you so
visiting
much.
with you guys.
And real quick before we head out, tell our wonderful viewing audience if they want to know more about Wolford Group or how to get involved, or if they have follow-up questions, what would be the best way to reach out to you?
So our website is thewolfordgroup.com. So you can find us there. And
that's WOLFORD.
yeah,
right?
THEWOLFORD group.com.
I'm sure we can put that in the comments below. I always look in the
Yes,
videos
put
and
it
they're
in
like,
the
they're going to put the
comments
comments below.
Yeah.
Yes, good
For
stuff.
sure.
Boom. Right, yeah. Hit that bell. Thanks, everybody. Ding dong. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thanks,
Kelly,
David. Thanks,
how was that?
Kelly.
Welcome. Your first one. You did it. It's over with.
Good.
So I don't even have to show up next time.
I'm not
It's going to be
sweating
great.
too much.
No, me neither. That's why we were jacketed, just to hide all that. It's all good. So
Black
I think
sweater.
I'll be back for sure.
good. I hope so. And hopefully Anne will have you back sometime soon as well.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks,
you so
guys.
much.